Hello, Garland Nixon here. It's Wednesday morning, and I'm on with Scott Ritter, and we're going to talk dirty bombs and false flags and all kinds of stuff. Let's talk. Good morning. Just a reminder to everyone, this is my Rockfin exclusive show. As I tell everyone weekly, I have one premium show weekly on my Rockfin channel, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. In order to watch the entire show, you do have to be a member on Rockfin. It is $9.99 a month. I do one Rockfin show a week that's premium, and this is it Wednesday at 9. What I do is we do the first 15 or 20 minutes here on YouTube and Twitter and everything, so everyone can see that. If you can be a subscriber on Rockfin, it's $9.99 a month. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just be a member. It doesn't cost anything. You'll see 99.9% of my stuff. This is the weekly show that I do with Scott. This is my premium show. So thank you very much, everybody. Scott, let's start. You got a great article in Consortium News, and I'm going to recommend consortiumnews.com. It is a fantastic site. Joe Loria and the people over there do a fantastic job. You're talking about the dirty bomb. Scott Ritter, check out, I'll make sure you go to Consortium News and check out the article. All right, all this talk about dirty bombs gives me the heebie-jeebies. Scott Ritter, what do we need to know?
Well, the first thing we need to know is that dirty bombs are primarily a psychological weapon. In theory, when you think about it, it's extraordinarily frightening. You take these, radiological materials and you pack them with high explosive and you blow them up, scattering this radioactive material around, and people get cancer and they die and they can't live there anymore, and da 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 da. And I'm not downplaying it. It's frightening, it really is. The good news is dirty bombs don't work. They haven't historically been shown to work. First of all, they've never really been used. There's not they've been tried to be used. We know in 1995, for instance, the Chechens put some cesium with some high explosive in a Moscow park. We know in 1998 they tried to do the same thing, putting explosive charge with radiological materials near a train track. Both of those were found and diffused prior to going off. And we know that Al Qaeda drew up plans for this. The documents were captured in Afghanistan, and Jose Padilla was arrested because he had a drunken conversation. Not drunken, but I don't know what kind of conversation he had with he landed in the United States and they arrested him, and at his trial they never brought up the dirty bomb. It was just something they charged him with. But we do know that the Iraqis, and this is something I personally investigated, the Iraqis in 1987 tried to build a dirty bomb. In fact, they did build a dirty bomb. They took zirconium, irradiated it in their nuclear reactor, converted it into zirconium-95. It has it's deadly. If it gets to you, you'll get lung cancer and die. They packed it with 1,000 pounds of high explosive, but put it in an aerial bomb. And they actually tested it. They did a static test, and then they did 2 static tests, and then they dropped the bombs actually, and with the damn zirconium in it, and tested it. And what they found is the level of radiation, lethal dose of radiation, could only be achieved if you were within 10 meters of the bomb center. I have to tell you that if you're within 10 meters of a 1,000-pound bomb going off, radiation's the last thing you're worried about. You're dead. And the other thing is the heat consumed most of the stuff. There was no fallout. It was localized, and it wasn't that dangerous. A small contaminated area. And the Iraqis went, the number of bombs we'd have to drop, because the idea was to basically drop these on Iranian troop concentrations and create a radiological zone that they couldn't advance through, et cetera. The number of bombs they'd have to drop was unreal, and it made more sense just to drop high explosives or use chemical weapons, which they ended up using. So the Iraqis dropped the project. Israel in 2010, concerned about this, carried out a 4-year series of tests, 20 tests in total, where they actually designed and blew up a variety of dirty bombs to find out. And they came up with the same conclusion that the Iraqis did. It doesn't work. Now, having said that, if you're an intelligence service and you receive intelligence that an opponent is preparing to build a dirty bomb, do you say, no, the Israelis say it doesn't work, the Iraqi bomb didn't work? We're not going to worry about it, guys. Don't worry about it at all. No big deal. You don't survive very long in politics if that's your attitude with this, even in a place like Russia. No. They received credible intelligence. And why do I believe it's credible? Because every country plays games. Every country has their Ned Price or their John Kirby or whomever, Jin Psaki, these mouthpieces that come out and spin garbage out there. Everybody does it. Even the Russians do it. You know who doesn't spin garbage? Secretaries of Defense, defense ministers. At that level, it's life and death. And the United States and Russia have a hotline. They have a series of hotlines at different levels that are put in place for the purpose of deconfliction. We're the largest nuclear powers in the world. We have some potential points of conflict. And what we'd like to do is prevent a Russian from shooting at an American or an American shooting at a Russian, and this thing spin out of control where we have a general release of nuclear weapons. And so we have these hotlines. And when they pick up the hotlines, it's very serious business. They don't play around. They don't cry wolf. So when Shoigu, the defense minister of Russia, is picking up the phone, calling his counterpart, Lloyd Austin, calling Wallace, calling his French counterpart, his Turkish counterpart, now he's called the Indians, and I think he's called somebody else, the Iranians, I don't know. He's calling everybody, saying, this is a problem. We have intelligence says they're producing it, and they're trying to use this as a false flag. They're going to blow it up and say that we dropped a tactical nuclear weapon on them, and then they're trying to lure the West in. Because that's, right now, Ukraine's in a panic. Literally. I mean, Zelensky is looking at the situation going, holy cow, we lost. We lost the whole thing. The war's over. We burned up our reserves. They're telling me I got none coming in. NATO's telling me they got no more HIMARS. They got no more nothing. The Germans aren't giving us the Leopards. Nobody's giving us anything. We're bankrupt. It's over. Our electrical grid's down. We need help now, and they're not coming. So we're going to lure them in like the Syrians did, if you remember, with the false flag in Duma. Lure them in so that they engage militarily, and yay, we're saved. And that's going through his sick little addled brain. And I believe it. So I believe the Russians have some intelligence. Now, here's what I think the intelligence. I've done this a long, long time. I've looked at a lot of intelligence reports. And even as crazy as Zelensky is, I don't believe Zelensky ordered an actual new dirty bomb to be made. That's a level of insanity beyond even him. But what I do believe happened is there's a National Security Council meeting in Ukraine, and they went, guys, we lost. It's over. If things keep going the way they are, this thing's going to be wrapped up, bow tied on it, and we're out of here by, middle of next year. We need to do something that fundamentally changes the dynamic here. What can we do? And the foreign ministry comes up and says, we can threaten to send a migratory assault towards them. If they don't help us, we'll send all the Ukrainian refugees pouring across the border. Therefore, they have to help us. And you're like, yeah, that's a good idea. No, man, it won't. Anybody else? And they come up with ideas. And one guy goes, why don't we do a false flag? We'll build a dirty bomb, and we'll put it in Nikolaev, and we'll blow it up, and we'll say, hey, the Russians did it. And then they'll have to come in. And they might have said, come back to me with a more developed plan, because that's what you do. Come back and more developed. So they went in, they said, okay, how can we build a dirty bomb? We got this, we got that, we got this. They make some phone calls. People respond. They come in with a plan. And Zelensky goes, that's insane. No. And he waves them off. And now you're Russian intelligence service, and you've intercepted phone calls from Zelensky's inner circle going to these various things saying, hey, if we ordered you to do X, Y, and Z, could you do it? Yeah, I think we could. We'd have to do, how would you do it? We do it this way, that way, that. And then the Russians gather all this information, put it together in an intelligence report and say, we're concerned that the Ukrainians are trying to do this. I think the Russians had solid intelligence. I think intelligence, though, is fragmentary. You have a duty to assume the worst when you see something like this. And that's what the Russians did. And they were very pragmatic. They made the right phone calls. They put the right people on notice. And as the deputy ambassador to the United Nations said, even if this was a false thing, we did the right thing. We put everybody on notice. We let people know that this is a red line. And if it never happens, that's a good thing. But we did the right thing. So I think that's what's going on right now. I personally don't believe the Ukrainians would ever do something like this, because this is literally, first of all, it won't do what they want it to do. And I would hope that anybody advising the Ukrainian president would say, this ain't going to be the way you see it. It's going to be a fizzle, poof, and then they're going to detect the radioactive material. Then they're going to forensically reverse engineer it, because every nuclear reactor in the world produces a unique signature. And we'll go, people like me, or people 10 times smarter than me, are going to gather the data, look at it, and go, that came from this nuclear reactor. That's been under the Ukrainian control the whole time. IAEA go and do an inventory. Oh, you had all of it accounted for here, and you have 20 kilograms missing here. So we know when they took it. And next thing you know, the fingers point right back at Zelensky. And anybody with any intelligence, and we can denigrate the Ukrainians all we want, I'm not going to call them stupid.
Right.
And there's going to be people who said, it would tell Zelensky, this isn't going to go the way he thinks it's going to go. It's going to be the exact opposite. We're going to lose the world. If we do this, not only is the world not going to believe it, they're going to all run away from us rapidly. We already pissed them off about Daria Dugina. We've already irritated them about the Crimea Bridge. And now you're telling me we're going to do this insanity? And you really think they're going to, even the British, who are cuckoo over Ukrainians, the British would run away from this. So I think the Ukrainians are telling the truth at the high level that they aren't going to do this. I think the Russians are telling the truth that they have intelligence that suggests this is going to happen. And I think the Russians did the right thing by bringing it to the attention at the level they did. It's important that they did this, but I also think that this is a dead issue. It's not going to go anywhere.
I did want to ask you about this. I got a couple of things I want to talk about. One about is what's happening with the General Suryayev or whatever, the digging in, things of that nature, it appears. But let's start here. We'll get to that when we do go to Rockfin. 101st Airborne. My thoughts immediately are two things. Number one, my understanding is they've been there for a few months. They've been there for a while. And this is kind of maybe PR going into the midterms, that it's still dangerous PR, because we don't want to American people to think, oh yeah, we're ready to fight the Russians. I also think that it's a very small group of people that's very lightly armored. You're not sending them in against, a full-fledged. At any rate, those are some thoughts I had to put together. 101st Airborne in Poland. Scott Ritter, your thoughts?
Well, we know when this crisis occurred, the United States has a rotational heavy armored brigade that we rotate through Europe on a regular basis, part of our resolve to show Europe that we're there. And it comes in and it breaks off and does exercises in Poland, then it goes up to the Baltics, and then it goes down to Romania, and they exercise and they break up and they train. Very rarely is that brigade together as a cohesive combat unit. We also have another brigade's worth of material that they can fly in the manpower and build up a second brigade. And there's talk about putting another brigade's worth of material in Poland. But I know they're constructing the facility. I don't think it's finished yet, but it might be finished. So that gives you a third brigade's worth of stuff. But they don't have 3 armored brigades there. I think they have 1. And that's 5,000 guys, a couple hundred tanks. 18 self-propelled artillery pieces, 18. And I'm not putting down the U.S. Army. God bless them. They train hard, and I'm sure those 5,000 guys would give a nice accounting of themselves on a battlefield. They would lose because they have nobody to their left and their right. With the Poles, they're going to fight with the Poles. They're training with the Poles. Do they really want to fight with the Poles? I think the Poles can hang with them. Do they think anybody can hang with them? Anybody in the Baltics are capable of doing this? No. Then we got a Stryker brigade that we have there. They're up there doing the training also.
And what's the Stryker brigade?
Stryker's a light armored vehicle brigade. It's
Okay.
It's basically an 8-wheeled vehicle.
Kind of fast moving.
Pardon?
Fast moving, kind of, that the idea.
Yeah, we developed the Stryker. We used it in Iraq and Afghanistan. It gives you great mobility, screening operations. primarily an infantry carrier. Some versions have I think it's maybe 120 millimeter cannon. I don't know. It gives it some they got some tow missiles, like some anti-air. So it can provide, some ability to screen. I mean, you put the idea of the Stryker Brigade in a situation like this is like with the Marine Light Armored Vehicle. You're not going to send them like the charge of the Light Brigade into, the Russian Tank Division. You're going to put them out as a screening force. It's going to receive the Russian Tank Division, develop the battlefield, sort of like Buford's cavalry did at Gettysburg. When Keith's division's coming in, the cavalry screens, causes them to engage early, delays them. And that's what these guys do, which is fine. You combine the Stryker with heavy armored guys, we could put up a nice little fight for a little while. But we don't have any replacements. We don't have reserves. We don't have any ammunition. We don't have any fuel. It'd be a short fight, but we can do okay. But for political purposes, we need to reinforce quickly. And it takes a long time to gin up a heavy armored brigade. First of all, you got to get the warning orders, and you got to get everything ready. And half these units are prepared to deploy, so you got to borrow people and all this stuff. There is a unit that's ready to go right now, and that's the Rapid Response Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division. And they're ready to move. And they got the order, and they flew to Poland, and they were hanging out in Poland doing some training. They're light infantry. That's it. They aren't strikers. They don't even have the vehicles. They got trucks, they got jeeps, but mainly light infantry. They're there for show. They're not going to stop anything. They're there as a tripwire, a presence. But they've been there since the beginning of this crisis. So I believe they were rotated out, and the 101st Airborne was deployed in. And the 101st Airborne, like the 82nd, is a rapid response unit. They've got greater capabilities because they come with helicopters. So there's a 5,000 man brigade, and they got a lot of helicopters. And these helicopters could move them around and all that stuff during the Gulf War. The 101st Airborne's famous for the big assault up to create a blocking force for the Iraqis pulling out. Yay, screaming eagles. Light infantry. They aren't going to do anything, but they're speed bump. They're a presence force. The fact that they're in Romania is indicative of, I think, a feeling in NATO that flank is vulnerable. The Romanians are worried about something happening in Moldova and Transnistria, and they wanted a little bit of bucking up. So the 101st is there to buck them up, but they're not going to buck anybody up because it's artificial. I read on a lot of these social media things. A lot of people are like, "Oh, the 101st is going to make an incursion into Odessa." No.
Yeah, that's the big thing that we hear. They're going to go and they're going to block Odessa and then blah 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 from the.
No. 101st is never going to enter Ukraine ever. They're there to have a presence. I know they had a very aggressive colonel. Hey, if you're a brigade commander, you're looking for that, the star. Right. You're very aggressive. So you put a camera in front of them, a microphone. Yeah, we're here, and there's the border. We're ready to go across that border at a moment's notice. We're the 101st. We're ready to roll, baby. And it looks good and makes everybody feel proud and all that stuff. And meanwhile, the people up top are going, "Oh, damn it, Colonel opened his mouth." What the colonel meant to say is, we ain't never going to Ukraine. We ain't setting one foot in Ukraine. That ain't going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. They had to have the White House press secretary say, no matter what a commander on the ground might have said, we have no intention of going into Ukraine, which is true because, first of all, not a single helicopter would make it to Odessa.
Right.
Or maybe one would. It'd be belch and flame. But the Russians have this thing called integrated air defense, and it actually reaches out over the Odessa area. And they have fighter airplanes. Now, I know we got fighter airplanes too, but really, we want to do that. We want to engage. You don't put helicopters into an area until you've cleared out all the enemy air defense. Helicopters do not survive well in heavily defended areas. So the idea that the United States is suddenly on a whim going to send 5,000 guys with no support, because once they're there, what happens? What happens? Are you going to dare the Russians to kill you? I dare you to kill me. The Russians will be like, I'll take that dare. No, this is stupid. This is irresponsible rhetoric from people who are either deliberately trying to create uncertainty or are just showing their ignorance by speculating about something that just simply isn't going to happen. The 101st Airborne is not going into Ukraine.
Well, we're now going to go over to Rockfin. As I told everyone, thanks everybody. I do want to give everybody an opportunity to see some of this show, and I think that was great. We're going to talk about next General Suryev, or whatever his name is. They call him General Armageddon. God only knows. I hate to use that term, given the circumstances we're dealing with right now. The general. We're going to talk about what's happening. They're digging in. We're talking about the plans. I'm going over to Rockfin for everybody, just so everyone knows. This is a Rockfin exclusive. What that means is this. I do 99% of my stuff everybody can watch. On Rockfin, we do one premium. We all Rockfin creators do one premium, at least one premium show per week. Mine is with Scott every Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. And you do have to be a premium member on Rockfin to watch that. Premium members are $9.99 a month. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. Just be a regular member on Rockfin. Again, you'll see everything but this show, and you'll see part of that. So thank you very much. Those who can afford the $9.99 a month, I appreciate it. Plus, you'll get this show. It's a great way to help the channel. Rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com. There's lots of ways you can help keep the channel on the air. You'll see that scrolling across: Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, you name it. Thanks a lot, everybody. We're moving over to Rockfin, and we're going to now talk about the Russians of bringing in 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 more troops. We've got a new general. It appears they're digging in, doing all kinds of things, and we're going to get Scott's evaluation of what comes next. Hold on tight for about 30 seconds, everyone, and we're going to go full Rockfin. Thank you very much. All righty. 1 second, and we're off Facebook.